I want to pull back the focus on maintenance. Admiral, perhaps you can answer this question. 291 ships currently in the fleet. How many of those are either at sea or could go to sea tomorrow? In other words, what percentage of the fleet is ready to go tomorrow?
Well, I've got, doing quick math in my head, which is always problematic in public. I've got 53 ships currently in maintenance availabilities in public sector and the private sector, so those 53 ships aren't available. And then there's probably another 50 or so that have just come out of maintenance that are, we would say, early in their training cycle that we probably would not deploy. I can take.
So that's about a third, about 33%.
About a third, and that's probably typically what we would see.
Now, my question is, I don't know how to analyze that figure. Are there any good benchmarks? What's the availability factor of Carnival Cruise Line or American Airlines with their large, bulky metal objects?
Yeah, well, I mean, Carnival Cruise Line is going to have a higher availability for
Or
use.
commercial shipping generally?
Commercial shipping in general, just because of what they use it for and the type of maintenance that they have to do to maintain the ship, and because of the fact that.
Well, I'm looking for a benchmark. I mean, I'm not suggesting that's the right one, but, you know, I don't know how to analyze 30%. Is that a good number, a bad number? My sense is that's a high number.
Well, I think historically that's probably what it's been. I think the optimized fleet response plan is designed or trying to provide more ACEBO to the fleet from what we've had previously. If you look historically at aircraft carriers, for example, we started in a 24-month cycle back in around 2000 where the ship was in maintenance for about 6 months, and then it had about 10 months of workup and then a 6-month deployment. So you would say, hey, it was only deployable 25% of the time. Today, in a 36-month cycle, you have 6 months of maintenance, about 10 months to work up, and the ship's available, almost 60% of the time to deploy.
Well, I want to follow up on Senator Hawley's question, which I thought was a very good one, and that is, how much can we do while the ship is underway? And has some serious analysis been done of that? Because one of the problems that's been cited here today is the high ops tempo, the longer deployments, the more active deployments. It seems to me if we do some really serious thinking about that, that's an opportunity to diminish the maintenance challenge if we can keep the ships in better shape while they're deployed.
We do a lot of maintenance while we're underway, but it's not the deep maintenance that you would need to keep the ship running.
Has the Navy, though, done an in-depth analysis of this option, a think piece, if you will?
Could I just take that for the record, sir?
I'd appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And if they haven't, I would suggest that it would be a useful project to sort of approach it as a blank sheet of paper and say, how much could we do without having to go into the dry dock?
Yes, sir. The only thing I would add is we also do a fair amount of modernization at the same time. So separately, we're doing a lot of activity to figure out how do we streamline modernization, particularly with our IT systems, so we're not ripping out cable and ripping out computers and be able to upgrade in place. And so that's another little difference than a commercial. They're not generally doing as much rip out and replace.
That's an upgrade as opposed to painting and scraping.
Yes, sir, but we do them in the same period. And so we talk about maintenance and modernization. We've got to work both, and we are working both.
And you have to do that with 40-year assets. I understand that. Now, Secretary Gertz, you've been talking about, you gave us some good figures at the beginning about improved, sort of a momentum in this, shorter delays, more availability. What are the bottlenecks? Is it money? Is it infrastructure? Is it management? Where do we need to target our attention? I say our, including all of us here.
Yes, sir. I think one of the real powerful things the committee did by putting under the RDA the responsibility for sustainment was ensuring and incentivizing that we're bringing a full set of the acquisition and contracting tool set to play here. And so what I tended to see coming in was we had a bunch of availabilities that we treated each as an individual product. And we competed each individually. We tended to be very late. and it would be kind of akin to, every Friday calling for a painter to show up Monday and doing that 52 times as opposed, and so getting a more systematic look at it and figuring out what's really creating the bottleneck. Part of it on the private side is not a line of sight or confidence in the business coming. And so if you don't have confidence in the work coming, you're not going to make the longer term investments to have the right workforce and the right infrastructure.
I'm out of time, but I want to leave you with a quick suggestion. When you buy a ship, you should also buy the intellectual property to the parts so that the Navy can print, which is where it's going, its own parts, which I think would be a significant increase in efficiency rather than having to wait to order parts and get them in. Same thing, I've made this recommendation. You should not only buy the ship, but buy the rights to make the parts as necessary.
Yes, sure. And maybe in a follow-up, we have 3D printers we're deploying with ships now, so I'd love to give you.
I could see them, I could see 3D printers deployed on the ship.
They are. We already have them deployed on ships. So I'll give you, an update on that maybe separately as a follow-up.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.